And we're live. Way!
And
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Scrimba live stream once again. And welcome to Danny Thompson, web developer and speaker. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here.
thank you for having me. This is one of my favorite communities, the Scrimba community. I talked to a bunch of people that are going through the programs, and I'm just happy to be here. And hopefully, we can talk about some cool things that get some people excited and focused on the path that they're headed down right now.
Yeah, I think so. I think your story is really going to resonate with the Scrimba community. Welcome also to everyone who's watching afterwards, because I know a lot of people can't catch us live, but they do watch the rerun. So I'll just go through what we have planned and then we'll get into it.
Sure.
So the bulk of what we're going to do is chat to Danny. I've got some questions prepared for him here, and feel free to leave any in the chat as well as we're going along anytime, and I'll keep an eye out for them. Then we've got the entries into last week's weekly web dev challenge competition and a little poll. Then I'll show you the next weekly web dev challenge. And then I've got some exciting Scrimba news about the site. And then I'll announce a winner. And then I've got some more news about events and things coming up. So if you're ready, Danny, shall we get straight into the questions?
Absolutely. Let's do this.
Let's do it. So first off, can you tell us a bit about your background and what you were doing before you got into tech? Because it wasn't your first career, was it?
No. For the most part, if you don't know me, I'm Danny Thompson. I'm D Thompson Dev on all social media. And the reason why I got into tech was because of a rapper. This rapper invested several $1 million into a tech company. And at this point in my life, I was 30 years old and I was working in a gas station frying chicken. And I found myself at a fork in the road. And I said, if I go right, I need to make a change in my life, and it's got to be now, and I don't know what it is, and I need to figure out what I can possibly do. Right? I don't have a degree. I don't have a degree. I never went to college. I didn't have that luxury. I'm the eldest of 9, so I had to start working for the family. So I said, I'm 30. If I don't make a change, I gotta do something now. But if I don't make a change and I go left on this fork in the road, I'm gonna be in this gas station until the day I die. So either change or stay, but this is the fork in the road that I'm in. And it was at this time that I saw this interview from this rapper where he invested several $1 million, and he's being asked about it. And he said, "Why did you invest several $1 million into this tech company?" And he said, I'm learning how to code. Now this blew my mind because I never knew that somebody from my kind of background could ever learn how to code. I always thought coding was reserved for the PhDs and the rocket scientists of the world, not for average individuals like me. And so he starts learning how to code, and obviously he's not about to give up his lucrative rap career to become a developer, right? Like that's not happening, you know. He's not giving up millions of dollars. Whoa.
It's my cat, actually. Continue.
Yeah. So he's not going to give up the rap career. So he starts learning how to code, and the reasoning is profound. Why don't we know more about these amazing machines that we touch 90% of the day? Like, why is the extent of my knowledge going to youtube.com and watching some cat videos, right? Like, why don't I know more? What is RAM? What is Snapdragon? Why does my laptop cost $2,800? Why does my smartphone cost $1,500? We don't know why. And what is RAM? What is all this stuff? And it's all buzzwords until you put something behind it. So he starts learning how to code, and so do I. And I get on freecodecamp.org and I start learning. And it was at this point that I realized, like, okay, I can do something. And my goal was never that I start learning because I was like, oh, I want to learn how to code because I'm going to become a developer. I just had this idea that I'm going to build a website and I don't know what it is, but it's going to be amazing. It's going to be great. People are going to love it. And I'm going to sell something on there, and it's going to be wild. And then you start learning more, and you realize there's a little bit more to it than, just saying you're going to make a website. There's SEO and all that involved. But the process was great. And then that is when I came to find out about meetups. And I found out in my area there was a meetup, and I go to this meetup. And at this time, I knew like HTML, CSS. And basically, at this time in my life, I could cure cancer with code, right? I'm that good. I was terrible. But I went in there, and I was like, okay, I go in there because I thought the world began and ended at JavaScript, and there was nothing past that. And I go to this meetup, and I instantly realized that I don't know stuff. I don't know anything. And I said, okay. I started to kind of get a little overwhelmed when people are saying like all these foreign words to me, like Java, C# and SQL, and I don't know what any of this means. But now I'm hooked because now I've been introduced to this brand new breadth of knowledge that I never knew existed. And it kind of like really got me interested. But then I instantly realized at the meetup that I've been excluded from the conversation. I just didn't know anything. I couldn't contribute. And it was in that moment that I said, I will never be excluded again. So I go home and I start learning more and more. I start learning about JavaScript and I start learning about ES6 functions. I go to the next meeting, like, do you know what an arrow function is? Do you know how to do this in ES6? And I go home and start learning more and more, start learning about SQL. And I go to the next meeting, like, do you know what a database is? Do you know the SQL table? Do you know what a SQL query is? I go home and start learning more and more, start learning about Java. And I go to the next meeting, like, do you know about Java? Do you know how a Spring Framework? And now I've been introduced and encompassed into this amazing community of developers that just want to help as many people as they can get into this field. And I realized I made the one mistake that everybody makes when they go to a meetup. How do I get the first job in tech? I asked that question the same way a million people have asked it after me and a million people ask it, before me. And they basically said the exact same answer, like a broken record. Like, oh man, the first job, that's the hardest one. But if you get the first job, everything after that will become easier. To someone like me, that is the worst answer you could ever tell me. Because not only did you demotivate and demoralize me, and you've given me 0 action items to work, and I have no way to get from A to B, from X to Y, but you've made me question what I've been doing for the last 6 months. There's no way for me to get there. And I realized that everyone at that meetup asking the same question got the exact same answer. And I said, I got to figure out a way that we can change this. And mind you, I'm still working at this gas station. My nickname was Popeyes. I'd walk into a meetup and 15 minutes later, the entire room smelled like fried chicken because I was working these 80, 90-hour weeks trying to make enough money to still be broke. And I said, I got to figure out a change here. And I started using LinkedIn. And using LinkedIn, to me, at that time, I didn't realize how powerful it was. I just saw this as a tool. But I realized then, like, I have access to every hiring manager in the world, essentially, right? LinkedIn has 675 million monthly users, of which 90 million are hiring managers, decision makers for businesses, and recruiters, right? You need to stand out where they hang out. And if that's where they're hanging out, why shouldn't I be there? But I was just terrified. I was like, they don't want to talk to someone like me. They want to talk to these people with degrees. They want to talk to these people that, work in office buildings. I'd never been in an office building. How are they going to react to someone like me? And then I realized in that moment of being terrified and nervous and fearing for what the situation is, the chances of them ever walking in my gas station, these Fortune 500 employees walking in my gas station, is 0. They will never be there, right? They will never be in this neighborhood. They will never be in this area. It's not happening, right? So the only way they will ever meet me is if they invite me to their office. They don't know that I exist on this planet. So what do I have to lose by sending them a message and seeing what happens? If they say no, I'm literally in the exact same position I was before. But if they say yes, I have the opportunity to change my life. So I started doing that, and I started cold calling and cold messaging hiring managers and recruiters. And in the beginning, like, who's this Danny guy? And I'm like, oh, I love Danny. I knew Danny from the beginning, man. Danny's the best. But it never would have happened if I never took the initiative to introduce myself at the very least. Because I'm a very firm believer in you never know where one conversation can lead you. Yeah. One conversation. It could literally be the game changer that you're looking for. And I think this is a long-winded answer to, hey, how you doing? But, we're here now. So, but I think that covers everything. And that's basically how I started getting into coding. And I fell in love with the entire process. But on top of that, I fell more in love with the communities because I truly believe meetups changed my life. A good meetup or a good community rather, is more valuable than its weight in gold. Because where else, especially as a beginner, can you get the positive reinforcement, the unfiltered code reviews, and the advice? Because when you make a website and you show it to people that are in your family that know nothing about tech, they're like, oh, it's great because they love you, right? But when you show it to a developer and you say, just tear this apart, they will give you actual unfiltered advice saying, this is terrible, this is great. And you can work upon it. And that just makes you more valuable in the hiring process and your value as a developer. Because until you start making those mistakes, you can never find out what the correct answer actually is.
That is so true. Yeah, no, getting feedback is, I think, one of the most important things when learning to code. So at what stage, when you were learning, did you get involved in these communities?
So I think I started going to meetups. I just knew CSS at that time, and after that first meetup, it like really lit a fire under me because, again, you have to understand, like at that time, I just didn't know what was available in the programming world, right? I just literally thought it was HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Like that's it. That's all you need to know. And then that's when I realized, like, oh, there's a whole world outside here. There's back end, there's front end, there's databases. Like, there's so much that goes into this. And what's crazy is, I convinced someone to give me an interview. Like, and we'll probably talk more about this later, but I convinced someone, and it was all that feedback from meetups that I realized like what I needed to be more marketable in the industry, to be hireable. And I think that is vital for everyone. So get into meetups as early as you can, because there are meetups that are extremely beginner friendly, especially right now with the world being the way it is completely open to everyone. And you can go to, like, I went to meetups in, other countries. I've been in meetups all over the country over here. So there are opportunities everywhere. It doesn't have to be isolated to your area specifically. And that's almost kind of the best thing for you, because if I go to a meetup in a stronger market than, for example, Memphis, Tennessee is not a super tech town, right? Like, we're building it up. We, like, the meetups that I now lead, when I started going to meetups, it was like 5 or 6 people, the same 5 or 6 people. Now our meetups, like our last meetup, had like triple digits. Like, we've built this amazing community. And if I can go to areas that have stronger developers that are talking about different technologies, you don't know what you like until you expose yourself to different technologies. So by exposing yourself, now you're like, oh, this is interesting. This is there. This is there. And the cooler thing about that is these are things you can talk about in an interview.
Yeah.
Like, I can tell you, every interview I went to, I talked about technologies that they didn't use, but it was something that I was playing with at that time. It's like, oh, he knows something that, we could add as a value stack over here. Or maybe if we ever explore that tech path or that stack, he could be someone that can add some valuable input there. I think that exposure will help you.
I think also talking about the fact you go to meetups in an interview can be helpful as well, because it shows your level of interest and being active in the community and things.
And not only that, but even for events like this right now, right? Like right now in this this video, we have, what is this, 100 people, right? You have the actual potential to have 100 possible connections that you're networking with. If you're one thing that I always tell people is, whenever you enter a conversation, add value somewhere or another. When you add value, it piques interest in someone else that's paying attention. So, for example, even if you interact with somebody's tweet, right? If you add value to that tweet, people are going to look at that and be like, oh, that's really interesting. They may check out your profile. They may follow you. But that creates a level of networking for you to a broader audience, right? So if you're in here and you're adding value, you have 100 people, maybe 10 of them are noticing like, oh, Sasha over here is offering some really great insight, or Hope of Glory is offering something great, or Michael just said something really incredible. Those things really bring extra value. And by making those connections, you never know where it's going to lead you. What if Hope works at a Fortune 500 that needs a developer that works in React, and you just happen to know a lot about that? Developers know other developers know hiring managers. Like, this is a great way for you to build those connections up.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you take us back a little bit to your actual journey of learning to code and how you did that? You mentioned Free Code Camp. What other resources did you use?
So I started in a Free Code Camp. Anytime someone asks me, where to start, I always recommend them, because number one, it is free. But number two, I feel like the way they have it planned out is, your first week, you're going to have HTML and the basics of CSS down, right? Your second week is when you finally get introduced to JavaScript, and it's a whole new world, and you're going through all this stuff, and you get that first taste. But I feel like in the first month of learning, no matter what platform it is, your first month, education is almost like a window, right? So when you build that window, you're able to peer through, and now you can understand what's on the other side. But not only that, you can understand how it relates to other languages. When you know the basics of JavaScript, you can understand, at least on a very rudimentary, fundamental level, the basics of Python. And you could be like, you know what? JavaScript isn't for me, but Python is. Or Python isn't for me, JavaScript is, and vice versa. I don't care where you start. I just care that you start. I don't care what platform it is. I just care that you take an interest, because one of my favorite quotes is, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start in order to be great. And that is extremely important when it comes to programming. so many times people have messaged me saying, I want to learn how to code. I said, well, in the next 10 minutes, you have to do this first exercise. Done. Because if you at least start, even with inspiration has an expiration. Meaning, if you're excited about something today, you may not necessarily be excited about it next week. But if you start when you have that excitement and you start implementing those habits, when that excitement leaves, something else is going to take its place. And normally that's discipline or your focus on a task. So if you take that excitement, build upon it, and do something with it, you can start making those steps. Once you're excited about the idea of learning to code, just take that first step somewhere, and I guarantee you it's going to take you way farther than if you were to be like, oh, I should learn how to code. I'm going to start next week. And next week comes and you forgot about that promise. So for me, I started on Free Code Camp, and I think Free Code Camp is fantastic for a beginning. And I instantly realized something, and it's something I talk about a lot, is I learned how I learn. And I think that is very important for people to discover which way works for them in a learning process. Yeah. I realized for me, I don't really do well with videos. And so when I was going from Free Code Camp and I was watching a lot of these videos, I said, man, I'm not retaining anything. And so what I ended up doing was I shifted my learning habit to project-based learning, and I just started building stuff. And what I would do is I start with a blank canvas, and to a lot of people, that's very intimidating. It's still intimidating to me sometimes, right? Blank canvas, nothing's on there. I have an idea. I kind of sketch out like on a piece of paper or Figma, whatever you want to use, like what I want to build. And I just start building. And when it doesn't do what I want it to do, I research that. That path of research, in my opinion, will be more valuable than following some random YouTube tutorial. Because the thing with YouTube videos that a lot of people don't understand is it's worth all the money that you didn't pay for it. Meaning there's no barrier to entry when it comes to a platform like YouTube, right? And that is why certain platforms like Scrimba, for example, are great. These courses are vetted. People have gone through that, and they know, like, okay, this is a person that is a great instructor that can keep the attention of the viewer, but also to make sure that they're learning the valuable concepts that they need. When it's someone on YouTube, they can just look at the algorithm, see, oh, did making a portfolio site become a very popular video today? Cool. I guess that's what we're going to make. And maybe they've never even had a job in tech, or maybe some people aren't really great developers, and so they're teaching bad concepts that you know nothing about, and now you're inheriting those bad concepts. So for me, I think platforms like that are fantastic, but start building something, and when it doesn't operate the way you want, find out why. And that for me has been the way that I've basically taken my learning path, and it's been the most valuable. Like, for example, I just started learning about a couple months ago. I started learning React, and I just started literally, like, I looked up how to do a hello world in React, and when I figured that out, I said, okay, how do I build a nav bar in React, and how do I do this, and how do I do that? And slowly but surely, a week later, you got a whole site, right? And another thing with that is, I'm a full stack developer, so my backend it was Java. That gave me my whole career, and now it's Golang. And I love Golang. It's been a fantastic language, and there's a lot that you can do with it. And for me, that's the way I learn, and it keeps me in demand.
That's good news. Yeah. So how long was it between starting to learn and getting your first job? Because this kind of ties into question Michael's asked. You mentioned you were 30 when you started on this journey. He's saying he's in his late 40s. Is it too late?
What's crazy is probably tech is the only field where people ask this every single day. Like, I get this question like almost every single day, and it's not just from 40-year-olds. I get this question from 20-year-olds. Is it too late for me to make this change? And I'm like, if it's too late for you, I don't know what I was gonna do. 30 years old.
Yeah.
But the way I kind of put this down is, I work with a 23-year-old who's a great developer. I was 30 when I made the change. Your cat agrees with me. 20, too young.
Yeah, he's here for it.
But I work with a 23-year-old that is an incredible developer. I made the transition at 30. My best friend made the transition at 46. And I worked with an incredible developer who was 62 years old as a front-end developer. You are not late. You are right on time. Yeah. Simple as that. Have you ever tried to pick something before it's too ripe? It's not in season. You're coming into your season right now. Whenever you decide to code is the right time. And here's the thing: don't be too fast in it, right? Like, I see all these people that advertise, like, 90 days to become a developer, 90 days to get a full stack career. And I'm like, have you ever seen the show 90 Day Fiance? They couldn't get a fiance in 90 days, and now you're going to get a 6-figure career in 90 days? Like, let's be realistic, because I think one of the biggest things that is necessary to become a developer, in my opinion, is giving yourself the permission to take your time. And I feel like we're always racing to some arbitrary goal that we've set up in our mind that doesn't exist. But we're saying if we don't reach that by then, like, forget about it. And what happens with that is you skip every fundamental along the way to cut a corner. Because it's like, I could spend my day learning this fundamental, or I can skip this and get into something better that I can use, like a nav bar. But what are the concepts of a nav bar? You have your unordered list, you have your LI, and now you just skipped over that. And now you're like, well, I just know a UL helps me build a nav bar. I don't really know what it does. You're hurting yourself in that process. So for me, I think you are absolutely right on time, whether you're 40, 50, 100. And here's the thing: path to monetization as a developer isn't just landing a job in tech. There are so many ways to make money in tech that it's ridiculous. You can become a freelancer. You can make a SaaS product. You can literally make courses on it. Like, if you can't teach, right? But like, you can literally make courses on it that help others. You can be charging for your services. You can be mentor services. You can teach at a boot camp. There's so many ways that you can make money besides just traditional becoming a software developer at a Fortune 500. So don't isolate your ideas to one specific area, but also know they're hiring. Now, with that also being said, it would be disingenuous for me to tell you that tech doesn't have all the isms: racism, ageism, sexism. It exists in tech, but it exists in every single industry. So, like, we have the good, we have the bad, we're working on it, but it would be really, really wrong to say it's going to be smooth sailing, because it's not going to be. And I think that would be regardless of whether you're 20 or 40. I think you need to go in with an open heart, open mind, be ready to be disappointed, be ready to be excited, and just make your way. Here's one thing, right? I say this quite often. It's a journey, right? This is your journey into tech. It's going to be hard because it has to be hard. If it was easy, it would be a leisurely stroll. It wouldn't be a journey, right? So just keep that perspective in mind when you're going through this, that there's going to be moments where you genuinely hate this process. There's going to be moments where you genuinely love this process. But don't make it where you think that the joy should only come by reaching your goal. You need to be celebrating the entire way there. I think one thing that we're so go, that we lose sight of where we are and where we've been. And sometimes we need to take a moment to celebrate those wins. There was a moment where you thought HTML was insane and you conquered it. There was a moment where you thought CSS was literally dark magic. And now look at you, right? You are in a position and you are in the place that you once looked forward to. Don't forget that, because you keep moving the goalpost as you progress. You need to celebrate your entire way there, and I guarantee you it will go a lot longer for you.
Got a really great comment in here that you should celebrate the small victories, which I think is absolutely very true. All of the victory.
For me, coding is the culmination of the very consistent small wins. Coding is literally the culmination. No one wakes up knowing React. No one wakes up knowing JavaScript. It is a constant day in and day out process that you keep working at, and eventually, like, you know what? I can do this one thing in JavaScript. And like, programming is kind of this thing, like, you spend 3 weeks learning HTML, HTML. You spend, 2 months learning CSS, CSS. You spend 3 years learning JavaScript, and well, you're still learning JavaScript, right? Like, it's a never ending process, and the goalpost keeps moving. But I think that's also one reason why we earn the incomes that we earn, because we're constantly learning, we're constantly improving, we're constantly pivoting. For example, React, a great example, is class-based components were the thing to do. Now it's all functional-based components, right? Like, you took an entire industry, the way they were doing it, and you pivoted to something better, but you had to adapt to that. It's the same thing with every single concept. You never know when the new change is going to come that will change your industry. You just got to be ready to tackle it and really work on that.
On the topic of that, learning new skills, got Miguel asking, how long should he learn in a day for the knowledge to stick? So you were saying earlier, don't rush is the most important thing. I suppose that kind of answers that. But do you have any other advice?
So I think I'm a very big believer in very frequent breaks. And I still do that in my work day. So what I'll do, and people can, people always disagree with me with this, but it's different for everybody. But I do like the Pomodoro technique where it's like 25 minutes on and 5 to 10 minutes off. But the thing is, in that 25 minutes, it's nothing but output. Like I'm just crushing it in those 25 minutes. And it's like a light switch. I literally like, this is my computer area where I've got my monitors and all that. And as soon as that 25 minutes is up, and if I'm like, sometimes if I'm like fully in the zone, I may spend a couple more minutes because I don't want to get out of it. But I step away. I go play with my kid. I go talk with my wife. I bother them a little bit. They're ready for me to go back to the office. But I make sure like I get out, I move around, and then when I come back, it's like a light switch clicks on again. It's like, okay, boom, back to focus mode. And I feel like and the key is honestly moving away from your computer, because I feel like a lot of people set those timers and then they go to like a YouTube video or something. But what happens is you kind of get like, well, 10 minutes is up, but I really like this video. So maybe another 10 and then another 10, and 10 minutes becomes 2 hours. And then you don't have the same push. But for me, that 25 minutes, it will be fantastic. But I don't think the amount of time matters. And I'm going to explain why in a second. Don't confuse movement with achievement. There are people that I talk to all the time that are like, oh man, I've been working all day. And I'm like, okay, what did you do though? Like, did you work in circles? Did you kill the productivity for that day because you didn't get off or pivot to something else or get the help that you needed? Don't confuse movement with achievement. Just because you're doing a lot doesn't mean you're achieving a lot. I would rather you work 15 hours a week of quality work and then screw off for the other 25 of your work week than to work 40 hours a week and only get the same output as 5. Make sure you quantify your time. And if you realize like, hey, I'm playing around, I'm messing off, walk away. Like, just walk away. If you're gonna waste your time, at least enjoy the wasting time. Don't just be like, well, I need to clock suck this for a little bit to get past the stage. I would rather you say, okay, I'm not doing anything. I'm going to go watch TV, or I'm going to go play games, or whatever it may be. But then when you come back, it's like, okay, we need to produce. This is the time where I produce. This is the time where I chase the better version of myself. Because one thing you need to realize is the version of yourself that you're going to become is cheering you on right now, and they want to see you get there. But if you keep delaying it, it's going to start diminishing in its greatness, right? Start chasing it. Don't waste your time. Be very laser focused, and I guarantee you're going to get exactly what you want out of it.
Do you think that approach you're describing is quite prevalent in the industry? So do you think managers have the same mindset that if it's not happening that day for whatever reason, you should just clock off?
So yes and no. So I think most companies know programming is a very mindset focused position, because what happens with programmers, we have table tennis tables, we have like little game rooms, we have little talking areas at our offices, because they know you have to switch off. Of course they want the output. And I mean, if you were a robot, they would be extremely happy, but it just doesn't work that way. Programming is a very analytical. I can't tell you how many times I've been in the table tennis game, and I didn't really play table tennis until, I started programming, but I can't tell you how many times I've been in a table tennis game and it's like, oh my God, I just figured it out. And I'll go to the side, I'll make a little note, I'll do something along those lines. And that's how I get past a lot of problems. Sometimes the greatest solution comes from something completely unrelated to what you're doing. But I think most people, when they start playing off, like, think about it. And we're human. We've all done it. I've done it. I'll open Twitter and I'll just start, tweeting people and completely forgetting about work. And next thing I know, 4 hours has passed by. I'm like, what am I doing? Or like, I'll watch a YouTube video and next thing I know, I went from one small little YouTube video to someone's vlog to someone talking about, basketball, whatever, and you just start getting down that weird rabbit hole. Like, I don't even watch sports and I'm watching basketball stuff. Like, what am I doing here? But that's how YouTube is made. Like, that's how they have a successful product. It's made to keep your attention. But it happens, right? But the thing that is really like what you should be focusing on is, if I have an 8-hour workday, let's say I get 4 hours of productivity out of that. Like, that is just pure, unadulterated productivity. If I'm killing those 4 hours by doing other things, how about instead of killing it, like I go enjoy myself, then come back and I can produce. But the problem really becomes, in my experience from what I've seen from people, is when they try to do both. Oh, I'm just going to watch YouTube videos while I code, and then you just start watching YouTube videos and you never code. So maintaining that balance is the key here. Once you realize you're playing around, step away.
Great tip there. Yeah, I think the importance of taking breaks can't be emphasized enough. Just as an aside on the topic of YouTube, my husband told me the other day, oh yeah, I watched an interesting documentary about how they pick cauliflowers. And I thought, wow, if that's not advertising how addictive YouTube is, I don't know what is. So Danny, can you tell us about your first job search, how you approached it and what it was like for you?
So for me, the job search, I don't have a traditional path. So I really, really built up in my mind that there would be nobody that's interested in ever having a conversation with me as an employee. And I did it to myself, and I know why. I know why, because I would go to these meetups, and all these people are coming in with degrees. They come from working in offices. They've got a head start on me in life. Forget about the field, just in life. You know, I come from a neighborhood where the problem with me entering tech was I didn't know the path existed. I didn't know it was possible. No one where I grew up ever said, hey, you could be a programmer. That didn't happen. We were told things like, hey, you can get a government job. Go be a bus driver and they get good benefits. There's nothing wrong with that job. But when that's the ceiling for your life, you can't imagine going further than that. So the hardest thing for me really wasn't becoming a developer. The hardest thing for me was saying, I'm allowed to be in this space. And it took me a long time to honestly like understand that. So what I started doing was honestly helping other people land jobs in tech. I fell in love with that. And to be honest, I fell so much in love with that I was actually exploring the fact of being a recruiter. And I held back on that only for one reason. I never, ever charge a single penny to help someone land a job in tech. Right? If I can help them, I help them. If I can't, I can't. But I never want to monopolize their entry into the field, because I feel like some people like, oh, I've got the 10 tips to get you a job. Give me $50 and here it is. So I don't want to do that to people. I don't want to monopolize their dream, especially when I know it can help change lives. And so I just started helping people in my local community. And I helped the first person. And I remember I was literally with him when he got the offer letter, right? We went through like interview prep and all the stuff that I figured out going through the process. And I just said, okay, like here we're going to do. We set up his LinkedIn profile. We did everything. And I was with him when he got the offer letter. And he had tears in his eyes. He was so happy because he finally made this dream that he's been chasing for a year and a half become a reality. And I was so happy because I was able to share that moment with him. And that is when I helped my first person in tech, and I helped 3 people get into tech, and then 3 became 10, 10 became 20, 20 became 50, 50 became 100, and now I've helped several hundred people land their first jobs in tech. But what ended up happening was there's only so much I can do in my local area, and I said there's no way that I can help people all over the world the same way I help them locally. Because locally we're doing in person. I get to help them one-on-one. It's just impossible to do that, especially now. Like, you know, I only started Twitter last year in March of 2020. I had 300 followers. Now it's like 65,000 plus. And, you know, I get 20 million views a month. Like, there's no possible way that I can do this. I have a job. And on top of having a job, I'm trying to help people. Like, unless I get fired, like, it's not happening, right? So I said, how can I help people do the same thing? And so I created the LinkedIn series, which has helped tons of people land jobs in tech. And it's basically outlined everything, where I interviewed 4 different hiring managers and showing them exactly what they search for, exactly what they look for in interviews, exactly how they find candidates on LinkedIn. And it's just constantly helped people. And for me, that's the same path that I took. And I think it was after I helped 70 people to where I was like, you know what? I belong in this space. And so then I started instead of going to interviews and sending other people for it, I started interviewing for myself. And I was offered several jobs in tech before I accepted my first, and I turned them down. And that was a hard thing to do, to turn down a job in a big office. And, even walking into an office building, like I'd get like this insane imposter syndrome. And, because I would constantly tell myself, like my mind was telling me like, they don't want to talk to you. They want to talk to a professional developer. You don't belong here. And I'd go back to the gas station and I'd be frying chicken, and I remember I knew exactly what I wanted. And I created a vision of what I wanted. And I'm very stubborn and I don't advise that for everybody, but I knew exactly what I wanted. And it was a situation of, if I knew I wanted sugar, I'm not accepting Splenda, right? I'm going for the sugar. And so I'd find these companies and I was very, very, very critical on interviewing them the way they interview me. And so I started learning about different cultures. I started learning about like what they offered. And the one question that I feel nobody ever asks in an interview, and it's the one question that you'll see, like they'll change their posture when you ask it because they're uncomfortable, right? And it's, why is this job role open? Do you just have high turnover rate? Like, why is this available? And for me, that has been the biggest indicator of, for example, one company's like, yeah, well, this position, the person left after 3 months and the last person left, after a few months. It's like, oh, you guys just churn out developers and you don't support them in their growth. That's not a place I want to be. I have very certain criteria that I'm trying to hit. I'm trying to make sure that I have an area that I can grow. And that's one of my questions that I always ask too is there upward potential? Or is this a position where you stick me in a hole and there's no way to exceed it? And if that's the case, that's not an environment I want to be in either. So
that's interesting. Yeah. And it's so true. I think especially for junior developers, there's the temptation to just go for the first thing that comes along. And I think it's great that you that even kind of knew to look for better than that, as it were.
Well, the one thing that I quantified is, don't ever get distracted by the dollar, especially in your first job, because the biggest thing with that is the pay in your third job will never match what you got for your first, right? So I would rather have someone set me up for growth and upward potential. Yeah. And the biggest thing is I would prioritize environment over pay. And if you have that luxury, I would say do the exact same thing, because sometimes we don't have a choice and we're going to have to take the first thing that we get, and it's unfortunate, but I mean, if that's the market that you're in, then that's what you're going to have to do. But if you also have that ability to say, okay, I'm prioritizing my learning, I'm prioritizing mentorship within this role, I'm prioritizing hands-on explanations to things because this has an extensive code base. And here's the thing with most people don't realize, there's so much that you don't know. And you don't know that you don't know, which is the problem. And you don't know what to learn because you don't know it, right? So you won't know what to learn until you actually get that first job. And I always say your first job in tech is that job where you're going to learn the most, because you're going to be exposed to things that you never even heard of. Pipelines, Jenkins builds. Like there's tools that you don't even know exist yet, right? But it's only going to happen when you land that first job. So it's good to get a job that says, yeah, we're definitely going to prioritize your learning, as opposed to just saying we need output. Because if you're a junior, I don't care how great you are, your output is not going to match the seniors. So you might as well get that learning while you can, so you can level up. Because in my opinion, the more you learn, the more valuable you become. And the more valuable you become is when you can start dictating your pay. So don't worry too much about the dollar sign for the first job, because that dollar sign for that third job is going to weigh it out so much.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fantastic tip. You mentioned imposter syndrome. Michael's asking, he's saying it's a very real thing in development. And then Hope of Glory is asking, do you still experience that? I'm not sure there's anyone that doesn't experience that, but what do you think?
Yeah, I still get it. My thing with imposter syndrome is you need to know where it stems from, right? What is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is the fear of being called a fraud, the fear of being outed, the fear that you do not match up to certain criteria. But the last one is the fear of how you would even react in that situation, which was interesting to me when I started learning about imposter syndrome. And I think once you understand where it stems from, you can control it. And the thing for me at imposter syndrome is I give talks all over the world. I've given talks to Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Fortune 500s, boot camps, universities, you name it, I've talked there, right? I've met these incredible developers, and they still get imposter syndrome. I've met these incredible developers, and they all have experienced it. So the thing that I think that really exists with imposter syndrome is if you don't get imposter syndrome, you're not making progress. Imposter syndrome is you basically moving out of your comfort zone. You saying, man, I don't know if I can do this. And I guarantee you, if you have imposter syndrome, you're on your way to a bonus. Like that's literally the way I quantify it. Like if you have imposter syndrome, you're doing something that you can quantify to somebody after you achieve it that says, I need a pay raise. Like this is that path. So if you're getting it, for me, I get imposter syndrome before every code review. I don't know what it is about a code review. I start breaking out in sweat. I start freaking out. I'm like, today's the day they find out Danny doesn't know a damn thing. Today's the day they realize that I've just completely just coasted for the last several years. Like, and I don't know what it is about a code review. It just does that to me. And after a code review, I start calming down, and and the one thing that I always tell myself before the code review is I've gotten a paycheck every single week for the last several years. They didn't give it to me because of my good looks, even though, I mean, come on, they could have. But, honestly, they really gave it to me because they know that I'm bringing something to the table. And I think what's important there is imposter syndrome will come for all of us. What matters is becoming friends with it. At this point, me and imposter syndrome are friends. It knows I'm here. I know it's there. We just try to stay out of each other's way. And by doing that, I can now control the effects of it. But it really comes back down to the one main thing. I know where it stems from.
Yeah, I think that's something that everyone should explore, really. But yeah, thank you for your input on that one. You offer a LinkedIn review service, I've noticed, on your Twitter. How did that come about, and what type of advice do you normally give people?
So here, I have the LinkedIn series. It's on YouTube. It's completely free. It's 4 episodes. It's like several hours long, but it covers so much to where it's helped several hundred people land their jobs in tech. Highly, highly, highly recommend that. But what was happening is I was constantly bombarded with, can you review my profile? Can you tell me what to improve? And I was doing it for a lot of people, but it just became so much to one point. I literally had a Google Sheets, like Excel sheet with LinkedIn profiles, and it was 700. And I was like, I can't review this many profiles. It's just too much that I can't keep up. And that was another thing too. I think, one thing that I was getting very close to, I'm very big on burnout. Burnout absolutely exists. And what I ended up doing was basically putting myself in a position to where I was about to burn out. And in December of 2020, I just completely shut off. I didn't do any speeches. I didn't do any talks. I just had to find myself again. And I erased all those links and I said, I can't do this for free anymore. And what I'm going to do is I have this service that I basically put 3 tiers on. I can tell you what you're doing wrong with your profile. I can tell you what you're doing wrong with your profile and suggest the necessary changes, or I can completely write your profile. And so those 3 tiers, and you know what? I thought it was a really dumb idea when I thought of it, because I was like, I have the LinkedIn series. Who's ever going to pay for this? It's completely free out there. And I said, I want to have these 3 tiers, but so someone, actually a very good friend of mine, said, delete the LinkedIn series if you're going to do this and it's going to take off. And I said, I don't want to monopolize the dream though. That's the problem. Either they can put in the work and watch the series, or they can pay for it and get the exact answers. But even the other thing too is people watch the series, they skip around, they don't pay attention, and then they end up, still not getting the results they want. But I can tell you right now, as we speak, even with all the 3 tiers I have like 60 profiles that I have to do. And it's constantly coming in. People are buying it. They love it. But the bigger thing is I have people that did tier 3s where I write the entire profile. I've got screenshots, 1,000% increase in views in a week, 2,000% increase in views in a week. I know how to get you higher in the search results. I know how to put what you need there. So either go watch the LinkedIn series or let me do it. But I think that would probably be the biggest jump for your career.
I've just found the link. That's the link to Danny's LinkedIn service there, if you're interested and would like him to review. I need to let my cat out because he's yelling. While I do that, because I'm conscious that I've told you it would be 45 minutes and we're getting up to that time. Can you tell us what's the number one thing people can do to ensure they succeed in the tech field today?
I think the number one thing that you can do, honestly, there's so many things, but I think probably the number one I would say is be honest with yourself. Like, just be completely honest. If you don't know something, don't pretend like you do. Research it. There are so many things that I find people like, they say, I really don't know this. Or the most common question I get, do data structures and algorithms really matter? Unfortunately, they do. And I hate saying that. And I feel like the main place they matter, honestly, is an interview. But I feel like when people ask me that, they're trying to get their reassurance, like, oh, I don't have to learn this. Instead of saying,
Yeah.
I could probably learn this and set myself up for what I need, right? So learn what you need. And if you know you're weak in an area, research it, learn it, explore it, and add it to your arsenal. Because I think being a developer is collecting the necessary amount of tools to solve any problem. Personally, I don't love any language. I love them all. I love every language, every framework. I will use whatever is necessary to be the right tool to solve the right problem. So don't be language agnostic to where you're like, it's only JavaScript for me and that's it. You can love JavaScript, but you can also love Python. And there's job opportunities in both. And if you get a job and your employer is like, I know you know JavaScript, but we want to build this entire thing in Flask and in Python, you better pick up a Flask book and start learning it. I learn whatever's necessary as long as there's a paycheck attached to
it. That's a great attitude. And I really hear what you're saying there about don't avoid the things you don't know / find difficult. Just tackle them head on.
Absolutely. And I think you'll find more satisfaction in doing so. Because again, it's going to come through that win syndrome and you want to win. But honestly, you'll be more proud of yourself for actually tackling it than sidestepping it. Because once you get into a conversation about it, you'll be like, oh, I should have learned this, but I don't know it. Remove that from that conversation completely.
Yeah. And let alone if you get a job where you're meant to know it.
Yep.
And you've pretended you know it. Yeah. You don't want that. Yeah, fantastic. Well, it's been really great to talk to you, Danny.
Thank you for having me, and I hope this helped out some people.
I'm absolutely sure it has. Really fantastic advice. So go and check out Danny's Twitter, which I will just share here. And he's got all his other links on there. And then, of course, there's the custom YouTube service he offers as well with 3 tiers. So, yeah, thanks so much for coming, Danny. It's been fantastic to have you, and I hope to have you again soon.
Thank you for having me, and I enjoyed every minute of this conversation.
Speak to you soon.
Bye.
Yes, so I'm staying online to take a look at your timers that you sent in, and there were some lovely ones this week. I had my cat in here. Sorry for the meowing. He was sitting on the windowsill, and I thought, oh, he's just going to sit there and watch birds. Obviously, he didn't. He decided to start meowing and jumping and all the rest of it. But yeah, sorry about that. Someone said in the comments that my audio is better this week. I don't know why, because everything's the same, but good to know. Maybe the mic is slightly closer. But yeah, anyway, let's get into it. The challenge last week was to make a timer because I've been using what I call the obnoxious timer to time the polls. And yes, you've really come up trumps. I need to find my little list. Yes, okay. So I've got this lovely one here from Wilson. And what it does, if I restart it, reset it, you can time laps. So if you were inclined to go out on the track, which I'm not, but I might start now I've got this, you could time your laps, which I think is very, very cool. So yeah, thank you for that one, Wilson. Then I've got this one from Bishnu with this psychedelic theme. But if you're not feeling psychedelic, you can choose other themes. Oceans, sky, or jungle, which I think is lovely. So that's, I already started it earlier. But yeah, very nice. Then I've got this one. I have to remember who this is from now. Joe. And what you can do is add new timers, which was a stretch goal I mentioned. Because when you're cooking something complicated, another thing I don't do, but I might start now, and you've got several things on the go, you can make a timer for each one. So if I need to remember to take my cat food out of the microwave, I don't do that. I could add one here, and then we have this little countdown. Custom ones. And what I really liked about this was the upcoming features. So Joe is going to add some more things. Removing things, better validation, colors. It's got everything. And then this cool little animation. So that's very nice. This one is from Illa Gold, and I think it deserves a mention for the font alone, which I noticed had a very funky name. Unifracture Maguntia, or cursive if you don't have that font on your system. But yes, how lovely is this? And it reminds you of your own mortality, which I like the message of as well, you know, seize the day and all that, and this lovely picture. So thank you, Illa Gold, for that. Oh yes, and there's a sound effect. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's bells. Very nice. And then end. Yeah, I didn't actually see that. Your life is shorter for 20 seconds now. Value every second of your precious life. Let that sink in for a minute. So thank you, Illa Gold. That was lovely. Then we've got lucky victories. Noodle timer, which I think is lovely animation. And I really like the shadow effect around here and the font. So that's awesome. And look, some little message about how to reset it. This one made me smile a lot. I just need to show you this because it really does blow your mind. It's a NASA themed timer from Tom. And then it's got this effect. It's fueling up. And then, woohoo, we have liftoff. I mean, I think you should send this to NASA, Tom. You know, they've been doing the same countdown for a long time now. And I think it's time to shake it up. So that's nice. And then I've got Amberine's healthy habits timer. And you can put in all different times for new healthy habits you want to start, including, as Danny was talking about, the Pomodoro. How topical. That's lovely, Amrine. And then we've got this cool little robot from Jan. I'm not sure if it's Jan or Jan, actually. Now I have to figure out how to use this because it's a bit beyond my capabilities. So we've got this. And earlier, when I was looking at it, oh yeah, look, it's sleeping, which I think is just so cool. And then we have this awesome timer up here. As you can tell, I've got a lot of entries that I liked this week. Well, I always like them, but even more finalists than usual. And then I've got Palax. Now, get ready for this. Do I want stopwatch or timer? No, I want timer. I always get confused between those two. It should be simple, but it's not. No, let's do 5. Get ready for what happens when it ends. I mean, it beeps, you know, beep, beep, doesn't it? And you can also have a timer as well. So that's awesome. Whoops. And then Miguel came with this one, which I think looks very pro. And what I especially like about it is, oh no, I don't want that long. Tab. Oh. Watching the seconds count down. And then the fact that he says, this is my entry for the Scrimba Weekly Web Dev Challenge. A little shout out. So that's lovely. Oh, just spoiled the new one. Anyway, let's have a look at the winner poll. Oh, now I need to choose which one to use. Anyway, you can start voting. Which one shall I use as the countdown? I mean, let's do Palax because I can't miss it when it stops. It's got the music. No, I do want stopwatch. And how long shall we have? 2 minutes? Reset. Okay. There we go. Start. Yeah. And in that time, you've all got the poll, haven't you? Yes. I can tell you about the next challenge, which is something entirely different to what we normally do. It is an interactive rabbit, and what you have to do is wire it up so that these inputs change the colors of the facial features on here. And if you think this is too easy, there is also a more advanced version, this, where you have to first build the facial features and then put in the inputs and then wire them up. So that's next week's challenge. And if you don't like rabbits, unlikely, but if you don't, you can make any other animal as a stretch goal. And the other thing is that there's going to be, well, there will be 2 prizes from now on. The winner of the public vote and a randomly selected winner. But I suppose really I need to know who the winner of the public vote is before I choose that winner, because otherwise they might win twice. You can tell I've thought this through. Yeah, let's move on. In other Scrimba news, I don't know if you've seen, but when you log on to Scrimba now, we have this dashboard, which is everything you need to know and everything you need to use Scrimba. So these are your enrolled courses, and these are upcoming events, including the next weekly Web Dev Challenge deadline. And if you hit that link, you get to the challenge. So yeah, there's no reason not to. And we also have a link to our Discord server as well. So yeah, check it out when you log on to scrimba.com. Yeah, you can see everything coming up, including next week's live stream. Oh, okay, that will have to wait. Sorry, Dylan. Yeah, so that is the end of the vote. The voting is now closed, and I will find out who has won. Oh, interesting. So there is a triple winner there. Miguel, Tom, and Wilson. You've all won. Great news. That's unprecedented, actually. Now, last week, I had some extra questions in the vote, but I forgot to talk about them afterwards, which I was a bit sad about. So I'm going to do it this week. So the cats you voted for are this one. Oh, and this one. Yeah. Me and my husband nearly bought a cat like this once. When we lived in Ukraine, a big thing to do is go to cat exhibitions. And we saw a cat just like this one, and we nearly bought it. It was so cute. But it's just as well we didn't, because we definitely didn't have that kind of money at the time. And on the topic of cats, we're house hunting. This is completely irrelevant, but I'll tell you anyway. We're house hunting at the moment, and we went to look at a house the other day, and it was full to the rafters with cat memorabilia. I'm talking like plush toys, paintings, signs, you name it, everything to do with cats. And to give you an idea of the scale of it, it's the most cat memorabilia I've ever seen, and I've been to a cat museum. And the funniest one was there was a sign that said, "Cat lives here." And as Michael said, that's my husband, I just think that was a bit superfluous. So that was amazing. So then my dad asked, well, what was the house like? I said, well, it was hard to tell because you couldn't see the walls because it was covered. I like cats, okay, but I mean, there's a limit. Yeah, so that's a funny tale. And the beach you chose was this one. Oh, this one got the least votes, and that's the only one out of these that I've been to. Fun fact. It's not one for sunbathing. Yeah. Where am I? So if you've just won one of the 3 winners, drop me a line. You can reach me, Leanne from Scrimba or at Scrimba. I can't remember. You'll see me on Discord. Or you can email help@scrimba.com and that will reach me. It'll travel through the pipes and reach me. And if you haven't joined the weekly web dev challenge yet, hit it up here. When you log in, if you haven't already joined, this will say enroll. And then you'll automatically get the emails, which should be coming out right about now, 5 o'clock on Wednesdays, with the new challenge. Now, this is interesting, actually, because last Friday, this had, I think it was 980 students enrolled. Now it's got 1118. So that's a big increase. But there aren't that many entries into the competition. And I wonder about why. Because it would be good if there were more entries. So if you have any ideas about why, let me know. Are people doing it but not sending it in? Are people worried because they think it won't be as good as the others? Or what is it? But do send it in, because there is a random prize now, which I'm going to find. So bear with me while I randomly select one. I should find some way of randomly generating this, but it's going to be a scroll and select for today. For JavaScript, Alex built some kind of bot to do it. So, randomly selected winner is Weed Marina. So, it might be Wede Marina. If that's you, contact me and you'll get a free Scrimba subscription. Gidget says, can you participate without Twitter? I don't want to register on Twitter. The problem with that is we've got rid of the form you used to use to enter. And now we're going to collect the entries from Twitter. Although there is the Discord as well, but that would be quite hard to manage. Watch this space. We'll have a think about it. Noel says, for sure they don't know. Link to join, Discord. Thank you, Michael. Oh, Michael said, you can submit it to us on Discord. Oh, there's your answer then. There you go. That's an executive decision. I'm glad you've said that, Michael. Now I don't have to worry if it goes wrong. Yeah. What's the next thing? The next live stream, I was going to tell you before the timer went off, is with Dylan. And he is going to talk to us about his experience of being a self-taught developer and how he has landed a sweet gig, his words, at Amazon. How to stand out from the crowd, effective job search strategies, and interviewing at a FANG company. I don't actually know if it is FANG or how you're meant to say that, but you know what I mean, the big ones. And on top of that, we've also got a pro members only event. So those of you who have a Scrimba subscription can meet the man himself in a private members event. That's next Monday with Alex. So sign up here. And don't forget to hit that bell to come along to the live stream next week, which, because of Dylan's time zone, it's at the earlier time of 1 p.m. GMT. So yeah, don't come at 4 p.m. because you won't be in the live chat, although you will be able to watch the playback if you want. Karen says, I'm late. Who won? Many people. Now I can't remember which ones they were. And I don't know which of my billion tabs it was. This? No. Okay, I'm just going to find the link again. See, this is what happens with tabs. Oh, now it's changed. But originally it was 4 different people and they know who they are. So I'm just going to stop before I make a complete mess. Okay, bye everyone. Thanks for coming. And yeah, please send in your entries. I haven't got my soundboard to make the little jingle I usually do, but I'll bring it next week. See you later.